Today, we're going to talk about something that seems to get women riled up when the subject comes up, and that is being a grandma who provides childcare during her retirement. When people ask me what I do in my retirement, and I say partly what I do is look after my grandchildren, I can't help but notice that I get very different reactions. Some of them go, "Oh, wow, that's so awesome. You're so lucky. I wish I was closer to my grandkids." And others go, "Oh, wow, that's not for me. I raised my kids, I'm done." It got me thinking about what the population in general tends to think about this concept. I wanted to see what the other opinions are out there. So I did a deep dive, and here's what's interesting. The research actually supports both sides, but with very specific boundaries. And that's what I want to talk about today. Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a retired counselor, teacher, mom, grandma, proud Canadian. And on this channel, we talk about navigating life's second act all on our own, including retirement and building that new life for yourself. And today, we're going to look at the concept of retired grandparents providing childcare. But before we get started, I think it's important that we differentiate between the time that is dedicated to childcare during the week, as not all scenarios are the same. So the guidelines I read about are as follows. If you have low involvement, they refer that to occasionally taking care of the grandkids, like a few hours a week or less. Moderate involvement tends to be more part time care, often about 10 to 20 hours per week. And high intensity is like 30 plus hours per week. And if you are custodial, that means you are in a full time parenting role. So, first, let's talk about why so many women feel that taking care of their grandkids during their retirement years is actually a blessing. Retirement is a time for absolute freedom, the chance to choose what we want to do. And there's only so many golf games and frothy drinks with pretty little umbrellas in them before we start saying, okay, what's next? I watch a million videos about retirement, and they all seem to come down to finding our purpose. And let's face it, we still are looking for purpose. A lot of research shows that grandparents who provide that moderate and voluntary childcare often report higher life satisfaction. They feel needed, they feel useful and connected to their families. And the way I look at it is when I'm on my deathbed, I want to look back at this time and say, am I grateful that I spent that time with the kids? And I know for me, I will be grateful I did it. And that's what keeps me going when I have to get up super early. And anyone who knows me knows I hate getting up early in the morning, but I will do it for them. Two is that looking after our grandkids can actually improve our mental health. Why? Because moderate involvement with our grandchildren is often associated with lower rates of depression. Sometimes in retirement, we can isolate ourselves. So, having that connection with our grandkids in a moderate basis protects us from that isolation. That engagement is actually protective of our mental health. But, and this is important, this tends to apply when caregiving is manageable and it's chosen. And three, not only does it help us with our emotional health, but it keeps the old noodle going and it gets us socially active too. So not only are we chasing them and getting up and down off the floor 20 times a day, so, it's making us physical. We're reading stories, we're playing games, we're using our imaginations, we're going for walks, we're meeting their teachers, all kinds of things that keep us engaged and physical and active. And some research even suggests that this kind of moderate activity and integration with our families is associated with a lower dementia risk. But again, moderation is the key. Four, it actually strengthens those family bonds. I think about the bond that I have with my grandson right now, and there are days when all he wants is grandma. And I love that. My family just came back from a trip and they were telling me that he was just a little monster on the plane. and didn't want to leave the plane. And so then they said to him, Grandma's in the terminal waiting for you. And he goes, What? He gets out of his seat and he's like pushing on people in the aisle, going, Out of the way. God, go see Grandma. So, I mean, stories like that just make your heart explode. And five, it helps your adult children out financially. Let's be honest, childcare can be really expensive. I've heard some families pay just as much or more for childcare than they do for their mortgages. And that's just nuts. We are very fortunate here in Alberta that our government has put in a $15 a day cap. I mean, you can pay more if you go to a private daycare, but if you're going to the public ones, then $15 a day. My grandson needs some special care because he has some health issues. And so one of the reasons that I'm doing this is because my kids trust me with him, and it would be so much harder for them to find a qualified place for him. And I know that I'm very fortunate because I was able to retire early. I was able to move closer to my family in order to be able to help them out. This move to where they live was very intentional so that I can be part of their lives because I want to have that relationship with my grandkids that my kids never really got with theirs. And not because our parents didn't want it, it was just that they couldn't because of work and distance. As a former teacher myself, I understand why my daughter in law, who is a teacher, wants to work. And I want to support her in that. And I know that when they're at work, they will have that peace of mind knowing that their kids are well taken care of. They're being cared for by someone who loves them more than anything, and that they're safe. And the other thing is my counselor brain kicks in, and I know that those first 3 years of a child's growth are the most crucial to their sense of stability and their emotional well-being, and those their learning curve is huge. And so I really want to be part of that and contribute to that growth. And for me, I'm thinking, what better purpose can I have with my life at this stage than that? Okay, so now let's talk about the other side because it is just as valid. First of all, high intensity caregiving increases stress and a lot. Research consistently shows that when grandparent care becomes heavy and daily, or custodial, that stress levels go up, anxiety increases, tension increases, and health complaints also increase. There is a big difference between I'll look after the kids Tuesdays and Thursdays versus 5 days a week, all day long. Or if you are constantly having to give up things or not being able to get out of the day that you were to be a caregiver when something comes up. And that can develop a whole lot of stress too, knowing that you kind of feel trapped in that situation. I think what's so important is we need to know what our own personal boundaries are, what we're capable of doing, and commit to no more than what we know we're capable of. I think a really important question for us to ask ourselves is after I've done this week, do I feel energized, grateful, or do I feel depleted, exhausted, and a little resentful? I think those are the things that we really need to look at for ourselves. Because let's be honest, like two different grandmas can do the exact same 3 days in a row, and they will come away with it feeling very differently. So we need to be honest with ourselves about what capacity that we have for this. And two, not only can this affect our stress levels, but it can affect our physical health as well. So, as I said, when we're doing it in moderation, it can actually help us physically. But systematic reviews show that custodial grandparenting, which means basically you're raising the kids, is often linked to worse health outcomes. It's basically because of exhaustion. We just don't have the energy in our late 50s and 60s that we had in our 20s and 30s. That is just exhaustion. It's physiological. You're older, your body is different, and your energy is different. And if you burn out and you get sick, then that really doesn't help anybody. Three is the biggest reason that women have given me. They were saying, you know what, this is my retirement, this is my time. And so they say, I worked 30 to 40 years and I've earned my freedom. And during this time, I want to travel. I've got hobbies I want to really pursue. I want to rest. I want to sleep until noon. I want to enjoy my friendships. I want to be able to work out every day and really, focus on myself. And honestly, there's nothing selfish about wanting to experience the retirement that you had planned. Because, yes, you've spent your whole life looking after your kids, looking after the people in your careers, and now it's time to look after you. So, if this is where your heart's at, then that makes total sense. Another aspect, number four, is it can impact our financial security. So, research shows that while grandparent childcare boosts the younger women, so for example, my daughter in law, her workforce participation, it can actually reduce the older women's labor participation. So, what does that mean? That means that if you're looking after your grandkids, then getting a part time job or having that time to make part time income is pretty limited. And that becomes really frustrating if you are in need of making that extra income. And especially for those of us who are on our own, we worry about outliving our money. So if we have that anxiety about not having enough money to, last our entire retirement, and yet we can't make that extra money with a part-time job or working online because we've dedicated our time to looking after our grandkids, that might create some problems. And number five are boundary issues and resentment risks. Because really, what happens if the above that I just finished talking about takes place? You start getting sick, you're worn out, you're not able to make extra income. And if the expectations that you and your adult children have about childcare are not clear, then grandparents can really start feeling like they're being taken for granted. Parents can actually start feeling a little judged, and this resentment starts building up. And all of this could damage a relationship within the family, which defeats the whole purpose of us wanting to be in our grandkids' lives in the first place. So, after all the reading that I've done and having lived it, it seems like the big takeaway is this. It seems that moderate and voluntary, otherwise known as chosen involvement, like for me, like I moved back to Alberta so that I can do this. So, this is definitely voluntary. It's often associated with better well being, whereas high intensity, so you are there 40 plus hours a week, or maybe even having full time custody is more likely to increase your stress and your health strain. So I've come to understand that the real question is not should grandparents help? Real question is what level of involvement supports my well being and the well being of my family? And the answer is different for every person, man or woman, because I know there are grandfathers out there who are doing this as well. Some grandmas or grandfathers thrive doing this 3 times a week. Some thrive doing it one afternoon, and some thrive doing it on holidays only. And some thrive saying, you know what, I love you, but I'm not your daycare plan. And all of them are okay because this is your personal choice. But if you are considering it and having been there, done that, I'm going to give you some questions to ask yourself. How many days per week feel sustainable to me? Question two is what happens if I'm sick or I want to travel? Do you have the option of saying, you know what, I can't do this day and this day? So, for example, a friend of mine was killed in a car accident recently, and his funeral is coming up. And I was supposed to look after the kids that day. And I told them, guess what, dudes, I'm out. I need to go to this funeral. And, so they're figuring it out. Question three, is this temporary or is this open ended? Do you see an end in sight? I know that I'm only doing this for a few years because when the kids go to school, I'm out. I will be there to pick them up at school if the principal phones and says, "Hey, can you come get so and so because they're sick?" Yes, I want to be that person, but I'm not going to do the before and after care. Nope. That is my boundary. So I definitely see, why I'm doing it during this stage of their lives, and then I know when my cutoff is going to be. Question 4 is, am I doing this from joy? Are you excited to give this gift to your family, or are you kind of feeling like you're being a little um, strong-armed into it? Because that is really going to change the way that you approach it. And I do understand that there's a million and one reasons as to why grandparents are just going to do this just because, right? It could be cultural. It could be because of today's economy. It could be because you're all living together anyway. And the list goes on and on. But I just want you to think about, why am I doing this? And my hope is that it's because it brings you joy. And question 5 is, will I still have time for myself, my health, my friendships, my goals? Because honestly, guys, it's all about alignment, how this arrangement is going to align with you personally. What works for you may not work for me, and vice versa, right? So we need to be in a situation where if caring for your grandkids lights you up, then that is beautiful. Yay. If protecting your retirement is what lights you up and protects your health, then that is just as important. So, either way, you get to decide what your life in retirement is going to look like and what your role as grandparent is going to be. I hope this video has given you a few ideas and some things to think about. And if you wouldn't mind pushing that like button and maybe even subscribing, because it really does help small channels like mine grow, and then tells the YouTube gods that you like this kind of content and want to see more. Until next video, have a wonderful day.